LAWsome by ConsultWebs. Breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm with your host, Tanner Jones.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another LAWsome episode. Today's focus, it's around the intersection of search engine optimization and legal marketing. My guest today, very thankful to have, is Matt Wetherington. He is the owner and personal injury attorney at Wetherington Law Firm in Georgia. Matt's firm takes on causes, not just cases. I'm honored to know Matt. I've spoken with him at some conferences and also around this subject of SEO, search engine optimization. So Matt, thanks for taking time to join the show.
Thank you. And SEO is definitely one of my causes. I think most of your audience is probably lawyers, and like everyone who's in the legal field knows that like when you're dealing with people who are supposed to be experts in like a legal case, like there's standards, there's rules, there's procedures. And then when you've got someone who like doesn't follow the rules, you file motions or you hear from other attorneys who have excluded those experts to say, hey, I got them daubered or they don't know what they're doing. Like, don't hire that person. But in the SEO world, it's literally the Wild West. Like, there are no standards. There's no court or even a jury or even people who really even know what they're talking about who's able to say, this expert knows what they're doing. This expert doesn't know what they're doing. And instead, you're just left with this kind of, I kind of like this guy and he did a good job on my website and it looks really pretty, but people either A, don't know what the data they're supposed to be tracking is, B, don't track the data and don't care, or C, are given bad data from their SEO company, the metrics that don't matter. And so this is a kind of a passion project of mine is SEO, just mostly out of spite and anger for SEO companies ripping people off. And so I really do appreciate the opportunity to come on here, and you're definitely one of the good guys, and I'm always happy to hang out with you.
Matt, I appreciate that so much. I've always enjoyed our conversations, and it's clear to me, and I know it is for our listeners, you're passionate about this topic among many others, but it's you've already hit on it. It's like SEO is, when you compare it to the practice of law, it's like it feels like it's on a completely end of the spectrum. And there are a lot seemingly more questions than there are answers for law firms who are exploring the concept of SEO. So let's start from the beginning. Let's rewind. What even sparked your initial interest in the topic of SEO? How did you even get into this with respect to your practice?
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars just literally caught on fire. Like the true reality is like if your SEO company isn't able to do one thing well, they don't have to do everything well, just even one thing well, literally every dollar that you spent with them might as well have been caught on fire. And so like I caught a lot of money on fire working with companies that, seemed to know what they were doing, but then the phone just didn't ring. But yet they keep saying, you need more time. And so finally I was just like, look, there are no standards. There's no rules. I'm at a point in my career where like, if I don't figure this out, like my firm is just not going to make it. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was kind of necessity is the mother of invention, but like I was just desperate to be able to like crack the nut and figure out how can I compete online to get the kind of cases that I want, to build the firm that I want, to be able to provide for my employees, to be able to provide for my family. And that's really where it came from, is A, desperation, and then B, just absolute rage at the lies that people tell.
Well, so it driven out of a need. And let me back up a moment just to make sure all of our listeners are aligned. The concept of SEO, search engine optimization, really the root of it is to rank a website, to get your site ranking for hopefully case driving search terms. If you're a personal injury lawyer, a search term like car accident lawyer, if you're ranking really well for that, likely driving qualified traffic and generating cases. And so to Matt's point, his history, which is akin to, unfortunately, probably tens of thousands of lawyers across the country, invested in a marketing strategy specifically for search engines, SEO, and did not produce return on investment. So clearly that is a motivator, and it's clearly a qualifier for anger as well. Yeah. So now today you've been in this, you've studied this, and I've admired, you've approached learning SEO like you would approach going to trial, preparing for a case. And personally, I have not seen that done up until the time you did that, when you've compared a lot of groups, and hopefully we can spend just a little bit of time at some point in this discussion talking to that. Yep. But now that you've gotten into the weeds of SEO, what do you find so fascinating about this practice?
Number one is that it's a black box. And so like what I attributed to maliciousness and like what I would call like scam culture, I think is the reality is that everyone's like making a soup. Like SEO is like a soup, and every SEO company has like kind of their own ingredients they put in that soup, because no one actually knows what makes SEO or what makes the search engines kind of move. And it's a moving target too, where like A, you don't even know where you're aiming sometimes, and then B, even when you think you have a good idea where you're aiming, the goalposts move as there's evolution in the algorithm and things like that. And then the thing that's fascinating to me now is that like I think SEO is about to become like a misnomer, in that search engine optimization is probably on the tail end of its useful life, and instead we're going to move towards something else that is a little bit more AI oriented. Like ChatGPT just released their search engine competitor, and so now it's going to be a question of how do you surface information and data about your firm and make it available to whatever tools are out there that people are using to make decisions. And we're going to see a big revitalization in kind of or I would say maybe more chaos in the marketplace in terms of figuring out what to do. And so like the whole thing is just like fascinating. And then also seeing like the people who are consistent winners, how even though you don't actually know what you're doing, at the end of the day, these are the kinds of things that matter. And if you're producing, for example, just useful, helpful content, like more often than not, that will meet whatever metric that, however arbitrary it is, that Google or Bing or whatever is using. So to me, it's that weirdo way that people kind of go about deciding what they're going to do.
It's a fascinating time we've been in. I've heard people asking even 10 years ago, is SEO dead? And it was evolving then. There were a lot of frustrations, just to your point, a lot of frustrations in the market driving that question. Is it even worth this? Should we even invest in this avenue? And to your point about, is it even going to continue to be search engine optimization? We have seen ChatGPT come out with ChatGPT search, and this is among others. Claude has done a really good job with some search interface within their chat platform, and there are many others that are going to come on the scene. So what we're seeing is this just incredible fragmentation of what was once owned by Google owning essentially 95% share of the search landscape. We're seeing that starting to get eat into by these other groups.
And so I'm just go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I wanted to ask, and certainly any points you want to make to that, I want to ask, like, what has your journey been there? Do you have any stories that kind of speak to that journey of learning, evolution, having to change after so much effort in one area? What has been your story there?
I mean, so for us, it's been, historically, we've tried to focus on cases that no one else is doing. Like when, our moniker is causes, not cases. And like, that's not just like a tagline. And I know everyone feels like they're special and unique, and like, I'm no exception. But like, the reality is that what we're trying to do is chase after things that other people aren't doing, so that we're trying to like move an industry. Like, for example, I was really into tires and recall tires and tire failure cases, when I was 10, 15 years ago. And what I noticed was that there was no like central database for recalled tires. So we went out and we compiled a database of literally every recalled tire that had ever been done, so that you can get like the identification number for that tire. And then we put it online and instead of selling it, because we had some companies who were interested in buying, and I was like, no, we're just going to make it available for free. And so we put it out there, and then, within 3 months, and I'm talking about just like a basic website with no optimization whatsoever, we were ranking number 1 or number 2 for literally every tire related phrase that appeared on our website. And it was simply because we were producing something that was helpful and interesting. Mm-hmm. And so I never had to do SEO, because it was something that no one actually cared about, was the second piece of that. Like, I was maybe number 1 or number 2 for those phrases, but no one was searching for them. So if you search for like recalled tire, like I was going to be number 1, but that wasn't something people were looking for. And then fast forward now, like we're very involved in kratom death cases. And now when you like search online, like our website is number 1 or 2 for most kratom related terms after kratom sellers, mainly because no other law firms are really interested in kratom cases. But for run of the mill things like trucking accidents or car accidents, our firm is just not even on the radar. And we've spent tons and tons of time money and energy trying to rank for those terms. And to this day, it still has not worked, mainly because of how much of a head start good, competent law firms and SEO companies have on us. And it's very hard to catch up when you're in a competitive market. But meanwhile, like if you're in, I'm going to make this up with no disrespect to Des Moines, Iowa, but if you're in Des Moines, Iowa, trying to become like the number one truck accident lawyer there's a pretty good chance that you could do it overnight simply because there's no competition in there. So for me, the evolution has been figuring out that like just because a certain marketing company calls me and says, Matt, I have managed to rank, this law firm, that law firm, that law firm, and that law firm for trucking accident lawyer number one in their entire state, and I can do it for you. And then you drill down and you go, wait a minute, you can't even sue trucking companies in these states, or your insurance, you're limited on how much you can recover. Like that means nothing. Whereas when someone shows up and says like, hey Matt, I'm in New York and like I rank someone for, Manhattan lawyer. Now that means something. And so like figuring out like the data behind understanding what is important, what's impressive and what's not impressive to me, like that evolution has really shaped kind of how I evaluate websites and how I evaluate SEO companies over time. And that's also what's drawn me to Consult Webs and you specifically, of just like how you guys have just consistently done the hardest and best stuff, and you've done it for just everyone in every market. And I just think that that really speaks to kind of what you're doing. And I don't mean that as an endorsement of Consult Webs. Like if you go to our website, you can see that we rank and talk about a lot of different companies, but like almost universally and consistently, Consult Webs is at or near the top in most metrics. And I don't mean that as an endorsement. That's just facts and data.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that. At the end of the day, there are a lot of credible groups out there, but there are a lot of groups on the total other end of that, and I think that's why it's so great that I mentioned that piece of data and the information you've really been bringing out to the public hasn't really been done before, and I think the beauty of that is that it creates a more aware buyer, a more educated buyer, and just to your point, some of those things don't even come to mind to ask as a lawyer if you're considering a group. If they're pointing to all these truck accident search rankings across the country, it just seems impressive. And so I don't know if you have any other examples of ways, like practical ways that a lawyer could begin to vet, whether it's an SEO agency or another group, anything you've learned in that process that would be helpful to our listeners.
The number one question that I get is like, which company do I hire? Like that I probably get that question 5 to 6 times a week. And the answer is typical lawyer fashion, like it depends. Mm-hmm. And I think that the number one thing it depends on is like the bandwidth of the company. Like Consult Webs may be like the greatest and best SEO company on the planet. But if you guys are in a growth season where you've picked up 10, 15 clients in the last month, and you're onboarding a bunch of people and you're trying to hire new, tech teams to help kind of account for that growth, odds are your 16th client's going to have a really bad time. And it's going to leave you in a bad situation where you're unhappy with how it worked out. And the law firm's going to work out in a bad time. Mm-hmm. Similarly, if you're with a company that's like in the middle of a lull and they're just like desperate for work and they're going to have to let people go if they don't bring someone on, and you're the guy who can come in and, be the big, client or someone that support it, you might have a really good time, even if it's like a middling SEO company who historically has not done a great job. If all of a sudden they're motivated to like get out there and work. And I think that it's just so difficult to like time that market. So like, what can you do as like as a law firm owner to like figure out where am I in terms of priority for this company, is to just ask like 3 basic questions. Like number one is, how many people are responsible for my website? Is there anyone who is exclusively like, who does the buck stop with, and can I talk to that person? And then number 2, that person, how many other lawyer websites are they responsible for? Like just those 2 questions right there, when you look at and say, okay, well, I'm comparing apples to oranges here, where company A has an account manager responsible for 100 websites, or company B is responsible for 12. I don't know. You tell me, like, who do you think is going to do a better job for you? And then third is, with your budget, whatever it is to just ask, like, how many hours of work or how much work product, whether it's, pages or optimization, like what can I reasonably expect each month for you to do on my website, and just reduce that to writing. And then when you have your check-in, because you do have to be patient with SEO companies, but you do your check-in in 6 months and say, here's what you said, not what I said. These are your words. You said, I'm going to do these things each month for your website. Have you done those things? And if they have, and you seeing growth, great, keep being patient. But if they're not even doing the things that they promised you that were their own idea at the very beginning, then fire them as quickly as possible, because you are now in money on fire world, and there's no coming back, unfortunately. So like that to me, I think is the easiest and best way to vet it out, but that's hard. And you got to start with a bunch of companies. And the easy way is just ask your friends, or go to my website and wfirm.com/SEO. And there's a big list of SEO companies, and just call around and ask those basic questions. And suddenly you're going to realize that like, it's not that hard to pick the right company for what you're trying to do. But at the same time, what's right for your friends is almost never what's right for you.
Yeah, well said. And really several good questions, very practical questions that getting truthful answers will help you understand it. It just sets yourself up for better expectations, better alignment. I love that. Matt, you've been in the space now, and at least learning SEO for a long time, many years. And so you've probably picked up a lot that most lawyers have not in this space. And you've hit on maybe a few of those, but I'm curious, are there any other notable surprises or any kind of insights that you've encountered that would be helpful for someone who's just now exploring this, or maybe they're in their their third round? What are some misconceptions that could be helpful to them?
I think if there was another piece of this that's helpful, is just figuring out your budget. And a lot of lawyers don't understand like how much they should spend on SEO. And for example, like I'm in Atlanta and we do personal injury work and wrongful death stuff. So the answer is like, what is my budget supposed to be? Way more than what I'm comfortable spending is the true and honest answer. Like we're talking $10,000 to $50,000 a month in SEO if you want to dominate the market on those kinds of terms. But then the flip side is that you may be in a situation where like you only need to spend $300 to $500 a month. And the way that you figure that out is doing what's called keyword research. So whatever your practice area is, and this stuff is free, like it doesn't cost you money or special programs, although there are some tools that you can buy that make it easier and more convenient, but just figuring out, and I'm not going to get into how to do that because Google it, because it is very straightforward, but to go in and say like, these are the terms I want to rank for. And then number one, like how competitive are those keywords? And then number two is how much traffic do they get? So like, let's say that like I'm trying to be the best kratom lawyer in the country. I don't think it makes sense for me to spend tens of thousands of dollars on SEO when there's maybe 500 or 600 searches a month. And the difficulty to rank for it is like a 0. And compare that to like a truck accident lawyer where it's searched 70,000 times a month in Georgia, and the difficulty is 70 or 80 on a 100-point scale. And so if you're trying to figure out like, what is your budget? How much should I spend? Like, do I need to go with like the most expensive and best SEO company? If you just do that keyword research and figure out like, okay, this seems pretty manageable, then your neighbor's kid might even be able to help you just by putting together a nice website and putting the words on there. It just depends on the keyword research. And I think if lawyers embraced that and just spent an hour learning about it, I think they would have a much easier time figuring out what they're supposed to be doing, what to expect.
Yeah, the budget piece is such a challenging one. And the only thing I'll add to that budget piece is there should be alignment with your group as well on general expectations. You've alluded to this, Matt, but there are constant changes in Google's algorithm and other search engine algorithms that it's very rarely just this consistent upward trajectory. Every month, more cases. You're going to have some volatility. There will be some down months.
And if you see that, it means bad things usually. It means you're about to get hit with an algorithm change that's going to tank your website.
Exactly. But coming back to the budget piece and getting alignment on what is a reasonable amount of cases that you would expect based on your other experiences with this investment. What is a general ballpark we can work toward? And are they going to hit it every time? Probably not. But on the other side of that, you're both going to be aligned from the very beginning. You may determine from the very beginning that's not reasonable, and it will be very difficult to make money doing that, in which case you made yourself a great decision just by asking good questions and getting alignment. Have you gotten into that realm?
Yep.
in terms
My
of
magic number is, so you pick your keyword, whatever it is that like's our priority. And so like, let's say that it's, car accident or something. And if you're not generating one lead per whatever period we agree on, like it's not going to work. And those of you who are watching this and know not a lot about SEO, you're kind of shaking your head and going like, that seems pretty dumb. But like, you would be shocked. I mean, like, I've reviewed 60,000 lawyer websites over the last 5 years, and you would be shocked at the number of lawyers that I've talked to who have said, I have not gotten one, let alone 50, but just one lead off of my website that wasn't a soft lead where I was referred by somebody else or was someone who was looking for me and knew that I existed. I would say it's probably the majority of people, actually, law firms that don't generate a single lead from their SEO efforts. And so for me, it's, if you're not able to just get to lead one, then it's probably not going to work out in, with whatever time period we agree on. And that's going to be based on the keyword difficulty. But let's give you a practical example and say that like you've got a keyword difficulty of 20. Like, let's say I want to do dog bite lawyer in, Montgomery, Alabama, where it's an area where it should be doable over a period of 6 months. And we all agree on that. Like, you agree with it, I agree on it. You generate one dog bite lead in 6 months, and we get to the end of 6 months and you've not generated one lead, then it's probably not going to be a good fit. Whereas if I want to generate a trucking accident case in Atlanta, maybe 2-3 years is a better horizon for me to hold you to that one lead metric. But you got to get to one on one agreed topic. And I think that that's an important metric. And now I'm to the point where the number of times that I've hired people and not gotten to one probably outnumbers the number of times I have gotten a lead.
But that's an interesting, I've not heard that, but I love the concept of like finding that first kind of minimum viable product. Like, can we prove that this works? And that's what it is. It's that first threshold. And if you don't get there in that timeline, you don't continue to waste money month after month after month chasing after this elusive metric.
I had a company that offered to do SEO for me for free until they generated the first lead, because we have a little bit of a reputation in this space at this point, and they wanted to be the company that was like, on the forefront. And they're like, we'll do it for free and we'll set up a test thing and we'll rank for this word. And then, 9 months later, none, like they made no money. They wanted 6 months to generate a lead for this thing. And I gave them another 3 months after that and no leads. Like they just were not able to do it. And that's with them, working hard to do it. It's because at the end of the day, there is going to be a competency component to this too, where even though you may put a lot of effort in, if you just aren't able to deliver, there's just nothing that you can do. And it's unfortunate, but it happens, and it happens more frequently than people think. And it happens a lot more frequently than SEO companies believe, because you don't meet the lawyers that aren't, they're getting scammed and taken advantage of.
Well, so let's take that a step further, because naturally, hopefully, those that are listening and those that are investing SEO have chosen a good partner, and they have produced way beyond one lead, and it's on track. But to ensure that it remains on track, what have you learned that are useful metrics, or what we often call as KPIs, key point indicators, that gives you a sense of, okay, this is working, I can sleep peacefully at night, or no, things have to change immediately?
The answer is more. And I know that's a lame answer, but it's the truth. Like more. Like you did 20 last month, let's try to get 23. For me at this point, my goal is reviews. Like that's something that is directly in my control, and I'm awful at it. Like the biggest thing that it's a partnership when you hire an SEO company, if it's done right, and you've got expectations too. And one of the expectations that's put on you is reviews. And I am horrible at it. I hate asking for reviews. Even when I do ask for reviews, I don't follow up. And that's one of the metrics that like they use to keep me accountable, and I persistently fail at it. And people watching this podcast, I realize they're probably fall into one of three camps. Either one, they're considering hiring consult webs, in which case like ask the right questions and make the right decision, but like it's probably a good choice. Number two, they're familiar with me and they want to know if I'm just like trashing their company and defaming them. answer to that question is like, no. I mean, there's just the right product company for the right place. Or 3 is people who just want to learn SEO and know a good bit more about it, or they're attorneys that are trying to do it for themselves. Mm-hmm. And if you're in that third camp, I think that the best advice is to continue learning and continue researching, and you can learn this stuff. And it's kind of weird to say that like no one knows what they're doing while also saying that it's like not rocket science, but it's the truth. Like there's 500 things that kind of attribute to your ranking, and you can't do them all. So just do as many as you can. And we talk about like how do you prioritize what to do and what not to do. Then that just comes down to that keyword ranking, where like if you know that it's very difficult, then you're gonna have to do more, check off more of the boxes. Whereas if it's just you're trying to rank for your niche practice area and you want to be the best, estate lawyer in a town that has no other estate lawyers, then it could just be as simple as making sure that you've got your directory listings up and that you've registered and have a Google My Business page. Like you can do the very basics, but until you've done that keyword research to even know like what universe you're operating in, it's difficult. And then if you're on the other end of the spear and you're just trying, the bleeding edge, and you're trying to like take down a Goliath, or you are Goliath and you want to stay there, then it really just comes down to money, like pouring more and more and raising your budget past the points that like make you want to throw up, which is where I'm at. And there's no way around it. And I wish that there were, but there's no such thing as like, perfect content that's just going to beat everybody out. Like you're going to have to spend money. You're going to have to invest in, either, PR press releases or special content, which Consult Webs does a very good job with. And you probably are better at talking about like what those special pages are, where like you just make something that's like newsworthy. Like I don't do a good job with it, but I know you do.
Well, to that point, I think it goes back to, we've heard content is king, or many of us have heard that phrase, content is king, for a long time. And Matt, that's exactly what you're hitting on. It's something that what is of value. It's like if you want me to write something and put a paragraph together, that is not king. It is content, but it's certainly not king. Yep. And what's king is something that's going to be engaging. It's going to be built for a user, a very specific audience, and they're going to find value in it. And finding value in it is going to illustrate some very clear metrics to Google. Like they're staying on your page a long time. They're sharing it. Other people are finding it, linking to it. These are all factors of quote unquote SEO, but they are real life things if you can really identify what matters to your firm. And Matt, I mean, you've alluded to this point already, but you're very smart how you've ran and operated your business as well as your marketing. And you made a strategic decision that this target of pursuing, motor vehicle accident cases or truck accident cases in the Atlanta metro is probably not going to come to fruition, or at least not for a long time.
That's true.
And so you started to pursue things that you could effectively pursue and successfully reach. And because of that, you found a very successful model in doing it. And other law firms have that same potential. But I think so. All of those points are valid and things that I hope our listeners hear, and that there is no one size fits all strategy here, but it really starts with the whole concept of a partnership comes with communication, good alignment, and expectations. And that's the big thing I'm hearing from you. It really doesn't matter. You don't have to be as sophisticated as Matt in the SEO space to be able to find a successful campaign. Anything else you'd say just to that general point, Matt?
I can't stress enough how important it is to just understand the bandwidth of the company that you're working with. And it's no different than, your clients coming and hiring. Like just flip the roles here, and a client calls you and says, I have a major case. I've got a wrongful death case, and it's a big case. And they ask you, how many other big trucking cases are you working on right now? And you say, well, I'm responsible for 350 clients and we've got a system that works. And then they call up a boutique law firm who says, we exclusively do wrongful death cases, and I try to keep about 15 to 20 cases at a time that I'm working on. Like, who are you going to hire? Right. Like, and the same thing is true when you're dealing with like SEO companies, where you deal with them and you look at their website and they're like, majority of our work is for plumbers or for dentists or whatever. We also do some legal thing, and they'll pitch it to you as like, this is a good thing. Like we're not competing. You're not competing with our other law firm clients, and we'll apply all these ideas that we've done over here to your law firm. And I don't believe in that. I think that a very good SEO company, I think the topic really doesn't matter. But if you're trying to play the numbers game and make a safe hire with such an important investment, I think you need someone with a track record of doing personal injury SEO or whatever your practice area SEO is. And I would also apply that to, practice areas within the law. Like, I don't know that I'm going to hire the SEO company that's done a bunch of criminal stuff to handle my personal injury practice SEO. And so, like, you want to understand, like, what is the track record here, and like, who are the other people that you've worked with? And they should be able to provide you with those lists, or you can find it yourself just by Googling whatever the company name is, and then be like, web SEO by, and then put the name of the company, like SEO by Consult Webs. And there's some more technical ways you can do that, but you don't even have to like know that, just to Google, and then look at their body of work, and then pick up the phone and call those guys and be like, hey, how often do you talk to your rep? Do you like them? Or have they made the phone ring even one time? And a lot of times they go, I really like them. They did this beautiful website, and we're still waiting on the SEO, but like, we've gotten more page views. We've gotten all these metrics that are going up. And you go, that's great. How long have you been there? 6 years. No. Whereas you call some companies and they're like, yes, like immediate, I meet with them once a month, and like, immediately we started, making progress, and I've gotten more cases, and now I'm doing pay-per-click, and now I'm doing, LSAs and all this other stuff with them as well. They're great. Like, that's what the kind of stuff that you want to hear, even though it sounds expensive. Right. And I hate to keep emphasizing this, but like, this stuff for most law firms in most cities, this stuff is expensive, and it's more expensive than you would expect. And it's just getting more expensive over time.
It's just because more competition, right? I mean, that competition driving the pricing up, it's just getting more saturated, but that's the nature of it.
It's not even the SEO companies trying to make more profit, like literally just like their like actual like, and tools and material, like the costs just keep going up. Like, there's a tool called Ahrefs that is like what I would consider like a fundamental tool. Like, they keep raising their monthly prices by hundreds of dollars. And yeah, you want to go with these companies that have these tools, right? So they get those bulk discounts and can spread it out. But like, that stuff really adds up when you've got like per seat licenses for a variety of products, and they got to have them. It's like their costs are going up. Then on top of that, like the pay-per-click campaigns and things like that pricing's going up. And then just the sheer volume of what's out there, just like you said, the competition increases, but there's also just like hard costs that you can't avoid. And I think that it's a mistake to do SEO that won't win. And, you can't dip your toes in this and just see what happens. You would just be so much better dipping your toes into a roulette table. Like, at least there you've got a chance to win. But instead, what you want to do is figure out, this is what I want to do. This is what it's going to take. And I'm going to pay the money to make it happen. And not just go for like whoever the lowest bid is, unless their plan is one that makes sense based on the keyword difficulty and you agree with it. At which point, like I said, you're going after 0 difficulty keywords. Go with your neighbor's kid, because at that point it is a race to the bottom. But that's not the case for most law firms. And you've got like, play to win. Like, do not just see what happens.
I'd like to end with maybe a fun question, maybe a stressful question for certain listeners, but just the idea of the future. I mean, Matt, you've been in the space long enough, especially on the legal side, but even more so on the SEO side, and what you've observed in running and operating a law firm business. What are you seeing ahead? You've been heavily involved. I've seen you heavily involved in technology and AI, and using this to just test and do different things. You have unique perspective. What is your view on this? What are law firms seeing in the next year?
So if you guys remember back, let's say 10, 15 years ago, just 10 years ago, when everyone was saying that like SEO is dead and video is king. Mm-hmm. It was this push to like make videos and have videos. And there were companies that sprung up that made these $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 beautiful videos. And then now you fast forward and you go and look at those videos that those companies made, and you just click on click the YouTube link under it and go look and see like, oh, it has 400 views in 5 years. Or you go and look at like the people who have like big YouTube, I don't know what you even call it, like channels, I guess, and see that like there's just not a whole lot of action and activity there. and then go look at their TikTok page and see like, oh wow, they've got 15 million views on this video that they shot with their iPhone, and it seems to be driving traffic. A, and then B is the AI stuff is real. Like I just went to ChatGPT while we were on here and I typed in who's the best lawyer in Atlanta, and it gave me a billboard lawyer, and then it gave me 2 lawyers that I've never heard of. And then I asked it for, well, what do you know about Matt Wetherington, the Wetherington Law Firm? And it spelled my name wrong, and also said that, it got the rest of the details, so it's clearly talking about the right law firm, but said that, it's a good law firm, but you may need to do a consultation to kind of fill them out, may not be the best. And like that, if that's AI's opinion of our law firm, like that's not a good thing. And so there's going to be markets springing up that are purporting to be experts in helping the AI tools and those things better understand your website, better understand your practice areas, so that when people no longer go to your website, but instead are asking an AI tool, like, who do I hire for this? They're referencing your website, or they're referencing you as an attorney. And that's going to take on like a very different shape to it. And so all that is to say is that the future, I think, is going to be, unlike video, I think we're going to move into a multi-channel, multimodal experience where you're going to see a lot more audio and video being created and tools, either what's through social media channels or through AI channels. And we're also then going to see a whole lot more of surfacing of information and data from tools other than search engines. Like, pretty soon, like your car is going to be like, hi, time for an oil change. And here are the oil change facilities that are nearby. Or you're going to be a car accident and it's going to say, hey, you might want to consult with an attorney, and Dave's injury law firm is nearby and has this many ratings and is the only law firm you should call, ignoring 5,000 other law firms that may also be a better fit for you. So we're going to see, I would call it an incredibly transformative and challenging time. But it's coming, and it's coming very quickly.
I don't disagree with any of that. I mentioned the concept of fragmentation earlier, and that's,
that's a better word for it. Well,
that's what we're seeing. And I mean, you're hitting right on it, in that you can no longer just optimize for one channel like we've done for so long. We've had firms ask us over the years, so are you optimizing for Bing as well? We might as well be optimizing for Yahoo and Ask Jeeves and everything else as well. But today it's like you don't have to do that, or at least in the past you haven't had to do that, because Google has owned the majority of the share. But that's exactly what's happening. Especially everyone with a mobile device in their hand, they have the ability to access AI, be able to do these searches, to have live chats and have it personalized to them. And so, in terms of our listeners, what can you start doing practically today? One thing I suspect is going to be continuing to reinforce credibility online, making connections. Matt, you've received a number of awards and recognitions in your practice, in your own practice. Those are signals. Those indicate that you know what you're doing. You've helped a lot of injured victims. And the same is true for every other lawyer. If they're not making those connections, leveraging the credentials, the awards, the badges, the recognitions online, they're missing an opportunity. And the same is true with, I'm also seeing a lot of some of these top tier directories that have strong visibility and rankings right now, particularly for organic. If you do a search in your marketplace for your practice area and you see the first 3 or 4 organic listings or directories, I would strongly encourage you to look at exploring getting listed in those directories. They have the visibility, but that also goes to your point, Matt, and that as
expensive,
no question, expensive. But do you want to win cases, or do you want a failing business? And that's the question.
So even with that, so so we do that. So we are on every, I agree with that advice. And we're on all of the bigger directories, and we have like the most premium of premium spots. And one thing you've got to look out for is when they sell you these top spots or hot spots, whatever it is how many other lawyers are in those top spots, or if there's a rotation, how many lawyers are in that rotation. Because 2 websites could have the exact same phenomenal traffic, 50, 60, 70,000 views a month. But if website, and they're both charging you, let's call it, $5. but website one is charging you $5 for a listing but you're one of 20 on that rotation. And website two has 100 lawyers in the rotation, and that's an easy way for you to decide which of those directories is a better fit for what you're doing. And I think that they underscore what you're saying, and I suspect you're going to disagree with me on this, but what I personally believe and what my personal strategy is right now in terms of how do you prepare yourself for AI and the fragmentation is backlinks. I think that no matter what Google says, that Google says backlinks don't really matter and that quality is king, but I personally believe, and again, I think a lot of people disagree with me, so ignore my advice, but my personal belief is that the backlinks and having more backlinks right now is going to be very important, because as these AI tools and the algorithms are spidering the internet and creating their understanding of what's going on, I think they're going to put a whole lot more weight on 1,000 websites linking back to your website than you having the highest and best quality content on your website, but it only being on your website. And maybe there's a balance of the two, but I suspect if you had one website that has the most perfect content in the world and another website that has garbage content but 50,000 backlinks to it, I suspect that the fragmented AI is going to prefer that 50,000 backlink page.
Yeah, I don't know. But I believe, based on what we have seen, links have continued to be important every single year, even though they've talked for years and years that backlinks are no longer going to be important. They continue to be a major signal in driving rankings. And for our listeners,
they're not important to Google. I suspect they're important to the AIs.
Bingo.
They're scraping these websites, and they're going to basically go back to, they're literally reinventing search engines. And I think that they're not sophisticated enough on whatever magic Google does to understand yet context. And right now you're just going to get straight, who do people talk about the most? And that's going to be defined by backlinks.
Popularity contest. And that's what it has been. And so again, for listeners who are not as familiar, a backlink is just where another website, let's say it's an AVO, AVVO, it's a directory. Let's say they're linking back to your website. That is a link, and it's a backlink. It's essentially trusting your website enough to send their traffic from their site to your site. And it's something since the inception of Google and other search engines, they've always looked at these as a signal of how popular or trustworthy is a website. And it continues to be a major factor. And so it's a great point to end on, Matt. I mean, there's a lot to consider with the future. Technology most certainly is going to change things. The big thing will continue to be asking questions on your intake side. How are you finding us? What were you looking at when you called in? Because to stay ahead of this, you have to be able to know in real time what's making the phone ring, continuing to double down on what's working. Obviously, it seems simple, but you have to know your data to make better decisions.
You've got to be, mean about it. And I know that and if you're working with a team, you're on a staff, and no matter how many times you ask people to always ask, where did you find us? Until you get to the point where you say every single client needs to have an attribution to it, it's not going to happen. You've got to get serious about it. And it's also important because when you go and try and hold that SEO company accountable, if you don't have the data and metrics on your side that is independent of whatever they're showing you, you have no reasonable basis to challenge what they're telling you. And I don't think it's fair to them even to say, I don't think you're doing any good work for me when you just don't have data to know one way or the other.
Matt, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
It's been one of the more enjoyable conversations I've had on the LAWsome podcast.
Excellent.
Really appreciate your insights here. What's the best way for people to find you? You mentioned your website earlier, wfirm.com. Any other way?
So we got two websites set up. So wfirm.com/AI has about 40 hours of AI video content, as well as some guides and tools. wfirm.com/SEO has all of our SEO resources. And then my personal pet project right now is wfirm.com/Georgia, which is the official code of Georgia illustrated. There are 60,000 images from the Georgia code where we bring the code to life with a bunch of really dumb AI images, but I enjoy doing it. And I'll show people how you can do it, and has a lot of implications, and it's super fun. So thank you very much for having me.
And that one in particular, if you have some spare time and want some laughs, definitely go take some time over there. wfirm.com/Georgia. That's awesome, Matt. Thank you again.
Excellent. Thank you.
LAWsome by ConsultWebs with Tanner Jones. For show notes, links, and info, go to consultwebs.com/podcast. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Watch for the next LAWsome episode to discover more breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm.